responsive and dynamic navigation bar by starting off with our header element and then including a nav element within that. We want to set the role of our nav bar here to navigation for screen readers. Then what we want to do is set up a div here, and then we want to set up an h3 inside of that, and here is where you want to put your logo if you have one, or you can put business text. Now what we want to do is add one more div, and inside of this we are actually going to start creating our navigation links, home and shop for the purpose of today's video, but you guys can add as many as you want. And for each one of these divs, we want to set up a class equal to nav child. Now if we save that, you guys are going to notice that we do have our navigation elements up here, but now we need to actually start styling these elements. So first what we want to do is target our header element, and we want to make our width equal to 100%. And we want to change our position to fixed because we want this to stay at the top of our website. If you don't want it to stay at the top of your website, you can simply change this to absolute. Change our Z index to 1 because we want this to display over all our content on our website. And we want to change the color of everything simply to white. Target our nav element, and we want to change our display to flex, justify the content within our navigation. So what we want to do is we want them to be spaced apart evenly. So we're going to specify space between, just like so. Now if we save this, you guys are going to notice that our navigation is successfully displaying over our hero image, and they are spaced apart evenly. Now we need to target our nav child class like so, and what we want to do here is create another Flexbox inside of our Flexbox that we already created, because this is going to let us center and align our elements within its container. Align our items to center. All of our items in our navigation are centered along the y-axis. And something I forgot to do here was actually specifying that these are going to be links. If you want to link to another page on your website, here's where you would do that. And now we need to target everything within our nav children. So what we want to do is specify nav child, and then we want to select our h3 element, and then we want to select our nav child again, specify our anchor elements to add a margin of 1 rem showing space between our elements. Target our nav child again, and in this case we are going to remove our text decoration, and this is going to get rid of that underline, and we want to change our link color here to white again. And I forgot to specify our anchor element here, and we'll go ahead and hit save again, and now our links are successfully white. Go back to our HTML page, link to Font Awesome, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to paste the Font Awesome CDN right here, and make sure this is above your CSS file so you can actually edit the styles from Font Awesome. But if you guys need access to that Font Awesome CDN or don't know where to get it, I will leave a link in the description. Add one of these icons right here where my links are located, because we are going to turn it on and off based on our view width. And in our case, we want to use these simple FA bars. And then for accessibility purposes, we want to add a title that says button to open navigation. If we go ahead and save that, you guys are going to see that it now successfully displays. Target our nav child class again, and now we're going to target our I element, and we're going to change our font size equal to 2 rem, margin of 1 rem. Our icon looks a lot cleaner. Now we want to start adding a media query, which is going to trigger the code within it based on whatever condition that we set. So we're going to specify our max width here, and so this is going to say that anything below our specified pixels here is going to trigger the code within our brackets. So anything under 767 pixels, the code within here is going to trigger. So what we want to do is target our nav child, and then we want to get rid of our anchor elements if our width is under 767 pixels. So to do that, we're simply going to specify display, change that to none, and change the size of our viewport width. You're going to notice that our anchor elements successfully disappear like so, and that's exactly what we want. But now when our viewport is too big, you're going to notice that our icon is displaying. So we need to set up one more media query, and we're going to change this to minimum width. And minimum width specifies that anything above this width is going to trigger the code within our brackets here. So simply we want to get rid of this icon, so we're going to specify nav child I and change that display to none there. And now you guys are going to notice that if we change the width of our viewport here, it's successfully going to trigger exactly what we want. So once we get past our hero image here, you cannot see our navigation because there's no background color. So what we want to do is actually change our navigation height to a different size. So we're going to change that to 6 rem here. Create a shrink nav class here. Obviously, this is not linked to our HTML page yet, but we will link it using JavaScript. And we want to change our background color to white, and we want to change our height to automatic, which is automatically going to calculate our height based on the height of the elements within our container. And then we also want to create a box shadow at the bottom of our header once we scroll down. And since our background color up here is now white, we need to change the color of our elements to something else, and we're going to change it to black here. And now if you refresh your page, you're going to notice nothing happens. So what we need to do is go back to our HTML page, go to the bottom right before the closing body element, and specify a script element. And obviously I recommend that you do this in a completely separate file, but in our case we're just going to add it in our HTML page to save time. So now we want to grab our navigation bar by declaring a nav variable with our const keyword and make that equal to document.query selector, and in our case we want to select our nav element like so. And then within this, we want to start creating our JavaScript functions. And now we want to create what's called an event listener. And all this is going to do is it's going to listen for a specific event. And in our case here, we're going to add this directly to our window. And we want to specify when we want our function to happen. And it's going to happen on scroll. And now we need to specify our callback function. We want to start with an if statement. And if our window dot scroll y, because if we scroll up and down, is greater than 50, and you guys can change this to whatever you want. We want to target our nav element, access the class list of our nav element by typing in class list, and then we want to add a class to our list, add shrink nav, else in our if statement. And we simply want to copy our code here, but now instead of adding, we want to remove this class. So now if we save, it's going to add if we scroll down, but if we scroll up, it's going to remove that. Notice our box shadow as well. But you guys can see that it's real jumpy and real snappy transition property on our nav element to specify all our elements here. And then we want to change our time to 400 milliseconds because that's how long we want this animation to take. Ease in and ease out. And now if we go ahead and hit save, you're going to notice that our animation eases in and eases out. And now we want to create the overlay, because when we click on this, absolutely nothing happens. Create one more div with the class called overlay. Create one more div with the class called icon container. And then here is where we are going to include our font awesome icon, and the font awesome icon that we're going to use here is actually the FA times, which is going to be a little x. Now we want to specify our title that says button to close navigation for screen reader. Create one more with a class called overlay text. Include our links here for our overlay. I meant to make this overlay class an ID. And now we want to target our overlay ID. We want to change our display to none, position to fixed, width to 100%, and our height to 100%. And then our background color, we want it to be black, but we want you to be able to see through it a little bit, so we're using our RGB value. Z index to ensure that this displays over everything else, so we're going to specify this as 2. Overlay text class here, and we want to change our position to absolute, and then our top to 50%, our left to 50%, transform here, and we want to translate this minus 50% and then minus 50% again. We want to align all of our text in the center. Anchor elements within our overlay text class by specifying overlay text and our anchor element. Display equal to block, color white, font weight to something a little heavier, 600. Then get rid of that annoying underline effect on our links. Add some padding to our elements equal to 1 rem. Add our transition property again for once we start adding animations. Target our X icon here, so we're going to specify FA time, font size to 3 rem, color to white, padding of 1 rem. Function called on, and this is going to turn on our overlay. Get our overlay element, so we're going to specify a turn on variable, and we're going to make that equal to document.get element by ID, and we're going to grab our overlay. Add a class to our turn on variable here by specifying our class list dot add again, and in our case we're going to add a fade in class like so, but we have not created that yet. Turn on our display, our style dot display equal to block. By one more variable and name this overflow, and what this is going to do is it's going to keep us from scrolling up and down when our overlay is showing on our page. Our query selector here, and we're going to grab our body element, and we want to specify our overflow variable followed by style, and the style we want to change is overflow, and so in our case we are going to make this equal to hidden. Grab our function, copy it, and paste it down below and change on to off. Change our variable here to turn off, and then we want to change these two down below to turn off as well. And now what we want to do is, instead of adding this class, we want to remove our class. And then instead of displaying block, we want to display none of this. And then this, we want to simply remove hidden, and that will get rid of our hidden style. To this FA bars here, we're going to add a on click attribute, and we're going to make that equal to our on function that we just created. Now we want to copy and paste this, and to our X element, we want to add this as well, but we want to turn off our overlay. So we're going to go find our element and change this to our off function. Move our overlay up 1 here. So what we're going to do is put that right below our header element here. And now instead of having this X on the left, it would make more sense to have it on the right. So what we want to do is specify our icon container class, align our text to the right. You guys will notice that our X is over here on the right side. And now we want to make our overlay text just a little bit bigger. So we're actually going to change this to 2 rem, increase our padding a little bit. So we're going to make this 0.4 rem just to clean it up a little bit. And now you guys can see that our overlay navigation looks much better. Eye elements, when we hover on them, we want to change our cursor to a pointer. Cursor changes to a pointer. Anchor elements, and change their hover to when the cursor hovers on them, it turns into a pointer. Create an animation using our keyframes. So to do that, we want to specify our @ sign, type in keyframes, name our animation fade in, and at 0% of this, what we want to do, our opacity needs to be set to 0%, and then at 100%, opacity to be set to 100%. Earlier in the video, we already added these fade in classes here, but for our off function, we don't need to have it. So as you guys can see here, we are adding our fade in class, but we haven't actually created that class yet. So over here in our CSS, we need to create that class. And then we need to specify our animation, and we need to change how long we want this animation to take place. Specify our animation here, and we want it to take 200 milliseconds. Ease in and out is when we click on our elements, it will successfully fade in. Create one more animation using our keyframes, and this is going to be our rotate animation. And at 0%, our transform property and our rotation to be at 0 degrees. Then we want to copy this again to 100%, and we also want to change this to 90 degrees so it will rotate as such. Now what we want to do here is select our FA times again, which is going to be that X, and what we want to do is we want this animation to happen when you hover. So what we're going to do is specify our animation of rotate, change this to 200 milliseconds, and ease in and out, and select our navigation overlay. You're going to notice that when you hover over the X, it does successfully turn, and all the functionality still works as it should. If you guys have any questions, reach out to us today through the comments or go to our website at kalmanwebdesign.com. I hope this video helped out a lot. Thanks for watching.